Good morning. Today we're going to start with our new module, environmental pollution and water technology. To start with water technology, water. Water is the basic need of life, right? So the entire earth is covered with water. 90% of the earth is covered with water. So among 90% of earth covered with water, only 1% of water is potable. That is 1% of water can be used for drinking purpose. So remaining 89% or remaining 99% of water which is available on the earth is unfit for drinking purpose. So you know the scarcity of water which we are facing today, isn't it? So during summer you can see, now we are at present we are in summer, you can see how every part of Karnataka or India, how people fight for water, drinking water. So water is very important for human beings to survive, animals, plants, for any living organisms. Water is very, very important. In fact, life has started on earth from water itself. So not only for human beings, even for industries also water is important. Even for human beings also, even for industries also water is important. So let us see where water is used. So as discussed, water is very most abundant and useful compound in many essential for human beings and also as well as for animals. So in industries, especially, you name any industry, it might be a textile industry, it might be a manufacturing mobile industry, it might be a tannery industry, name any industry, that industry requires water. So there is no any single industry which does not require water, and that any industry which we are using, industries require pure water for manufacturing. So the water should be very pure. We cannot use normal saline water. So if water contains impurities, it may cause so many other, it may if water is contaminated, it may cause something. So what are those? We'll see. What are those problems caused or faced in industries? We will see. So let us see what are the impurities present in natural water. So it contains dissolved impurities, it contains suspended impurities, it contains dissolved gases, it contains organic matter. So these are the impurities present in the water. So it contains dissolved impurities, it contains suspended impurities, it contains dissolved gases, and it contains organic matter. So the industrial wastewater should be, water which is used should be free from all these impurities. So the dissolved impurities can be purified. It will be purified. The natural impurities can also be removed. So the water which is used in the industries, if purified, is first fed into the boiler. Okay, not when, then it is boiled and steam is used. In almost all industries, you are going to use steam. So the water used in boiler is called as boiler feed water. So if the impurities are present in the boiler feed water, they can cause problems to boiler, and they're called as scales and sludge, priming and foaming, and boiler corrosion. So if boiler feed water contains impurities, it might be in the form of dissolved salts, it causes scales and sludge, it causes priming and foaming, it causes boiler corrosion. So what is scales and sludge? What is boiler corrosion? What is priming and foaming? We will discuss one by one. So the suspended impurities can be removed. The floating impurities can be removed. The dissolved impurities can also be removed. Even though the water which is fed in the boiler is pure, if it contains any other impurity, then what happens? It causes these problems. So what are scales? What are sludges? Let us discuss one by one. The scales and sludge. So you know that when you boil the water in a same container, all of us boil the water to take baths, isn't it? Now we have solar water heaters, and we have showers and other things. So earlier days used to have a boiler, or used to boil the water in a single container, and later used to transfer into bucket and used to take bath. So if you boil the water in a single container continuously without washing, if you are changing the container, that is a different thing. So I'll tell you that what is that later. So if you are using same container daily, regularly, what happens is at the bottom you can see the deposits of salts. Okay, you can see the deposits of salt, and that deposit, that thick layer, is called as scales. The thick layer is called as scales. So when water is heated inside the boiler, impurities gets precipitated, and if the precipitate formed is hard and adherent to the walls of the container, then it is called as a scale. So whatever precipitate is formed, if that precipitate is adherent, if it is thick and it is adherent to the walls of the container, it is called as scale. That is what I told you the example, right? If you use the same container to the boiled water continuously for 1 week, what will happen? You can see the inner walls of the container. It contains what? White deposits, scales. That is called as scales. And what is sludge? What do you mean by sludge? Sludge is nothing but, yeah, I mean, now you have RO water, you have aqua purifier, you have so many other things, right? I don't want to, I mean, market any of the water purifiers. So earlier, doctor used to suggest you to boil the water and drink water, consume, in order to protect ourselves from waterborne diseases. So when you boil the water and leave it for some time to cool down, you can see some white color particles on the surface of the water, isn't it? So that is called as sludge. That is called as sludge. So if the precipitate formed in, when we boil the water, if the precipitate formed is loose and non-adherent, non-adherent means it will not stick to the surface of the container, it is called as sludge. If it sticks to the container, it is called as scales. If it does not stick to the container, it is called as sludge. So now we have got a clear-cut picture what is scale, what is sludge, and I assure you that most of you have come across in your life, day-to-day life, the scales and sludge, but you don't know what is scale and what is sludge, right? Now when you see, you can tell this is scale and this is sludge. So now the question is why scale is formed and why sludge is formed. So now let us see why scale is formed. So if scale forms, what happens? I've just given you an example in our day-to-day life, but the scale and sludge causes major problems in industries. So causes for formation of scales. So the scales are formed due to presence of salts, of that is salts like magnesium chloride, magnesium bicarbonate, calcium bicarbonate, and calcium sulfate. So if the water, the boiler feed water contains salts like magnesium chloride, magnesium bicarbonate, calcium bicarbonate, and calcium sulfate, and silica in water, so this will get precipitated. This will get precipitated. You can see here. Okay, this is scales. The picture is very clear. This is scale. So this will get precipitated. This is the reason for forming scales. So if scales are formed, what happens? If scales are formed, loss of fuel. Why there is loss of fuel? Fuel loss occurs because, so what happens? The scale is deposited. You can see this is the container. The scale is deposited on the walls of the container. When water flows through this coil over here, what is happening? First, the scale should get heated up, then the coil should get heated up, then water will get heated up. So this is the reason, there is loss of fuel. This is how loss of fuel occurs. So boiler efficiency reduces. So boiler may explode. So there is decrease in strength of boiler and cleaning process becomes expensive. So these are the disadvantages of scale formation in the boiler. So now let us see how to prevent this scale. So scales can be prevented by removal of hardness. So this magnesium chloride, magnesium sulfate, why it is present? Because of the water is hard, right? So if water is hard, you're supposed to soften the water. So before subjecting the water for feeding the water into boiler, you're supposed to soften the water. Okay, supposed to remove the hardness of water. Then carbonate conditioning, that is removing the bicarbonate, carbonates, everything. Removing phosphate is called phosphate conditioning. And by blow down method, certain extent you can remove the scales. You can prevent scales. Okay. Next, sludge. So as I told you, so when you boil the water, if the precipitate is formed is loose and non-adherent, it is called as sludge. So what are the causes for sludge? So it is the salts, presence of salts like calcium chloride. It is mainly due to calcium chloride, magnesium sulfate, and magnesium carbonate. So scales is due to bicarbonate. This is due to magnesium sulfate and chloride, right? So these are not soluble in hot conditions. You might tell it will only float, right? But in a hotter condition, this precipitate will float. In colder condition, what will happen? Even this will precipitate and it will form. It will choke. Okay, so when water is flowing or steam is flowing from one part, from the source to the end, it will have so many turnings. The temperature will not be common. It will not be even. So it is what will happen when temperature decreases, it will precipitate. When the sludge will precipitate. So when there is a bend like this, so this particular place, what will happen? Temperature is less. It will start depositing here. So on one fine day, what happens? There will not be movement of any hot water or steam, and this may lead to blast of the boiler. Okay, so in cooler parts, what happens? The sludge will get precipitated. So what are the disadvantages of sludge? So once again, loss of same disadvantages: loss of fuel, reduces boiler efficiency, lead to blockage in the cooler pipes parts, and cleaning is very expensive. You can see this is the sludge formed in industries. You can see it is the choke. Okay, so using soft water to some extent prevents sludge. So by removing salt from the water time to time, and by blow down method, to some extent you can prevent the formation of sludge. So next, let us see what will happen. I mean, because of this, not only this scales and sludge, you have boiler corrosion also. Why does boiler corrode? We will discuss in our next session. Thank you.